15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Shadow. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 30 seconds. Forward, drift. Contact light. Okay, engine stop.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're going to be busy for a minute.
Armstrong is on the moon. Neil Armstrong, 38-year-old American, standing on the surface of the moon. On this July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Oh, that looks beautiful from here, Neil.
It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here.
Magnificent desolation.
Tranquility Base, Houston, guidance recommendation is pings, and you're cleared for takeoff.
Roger, understand. We're number 1 on the runway. 7, 6, 5, engine arm ascent. Shadow, beautiful. Very smooth. Very quiet ride.
Apollo 11, this is Hornet, over.
Apollo 1, this is Apollo 11, reading your loud and clear. Our position 1330.
The most common theory is that the moon landing were set on a sound stage, not in space. Perhaps on an Air Force base near San Bernardino, called Norton Air Force Base, where they have the world's largest sound stages under tremendously efficient security. If in fact we did go to the moon, as NASA contends, then the evidence that we did go to the moon should stand up to scrutiny. The evidence NASA provide has been in the public domain for more than 50 years now in the form of photographs, images of spacecraft taken by astronauts in other spacecraft, as well as images of the spacecraft heading towards the moon by telescope from the Earth, video records broadcast in real time, and scientific experiments placed on the moon, whose placement was clearly documented by the lunar photography, including still photography by the astronauts and video images transmitted in real time, moon rocks and samples returned from the surface of the moon which support the supposition that they resided on the moon. The moon landing was fake crowd, or the TMLWF crowd usually falls back on the typical large and complex, self-sustaining conspiracy theory arguments, including the grand notion that they were faked by elaborate Hollywood-style film fakery on some secret soundstage. Let's stop to this for a moment and look at the evidence provided by NASA and the reality the evidence depict. Image 1. This is a famous picture labeled Man on the Moon. If you will look at Area B, you will notice a shadow cast across Buzz Aldrin's spacesuit. Once again, if the sun is the only light source used on the moon, so this shadow would have been much darker. As sun is the only primary light source, however, it lights up not only the lunar surface, the astronaut's spacesuit, but everything else on the lunar surface, so that light scattered off of those objects should be filled with darker shadows. Looking at Area C, you will notice that the surface of the moon fades off into the distance, as behind the picture you can't see the bright lights of the sunlight. As the sun is the primary light source in the moon, and it's so bright that the area behind the image must be bright. Looking at Area D, you can plainly see some type of structure reflected through Aldrin's helmet. I do not know what it is, but it is there. There are two items that are seen reflected on the left side of Aldrin's visor. One is the solar wind collection experiment, and the second is the flag. The exact location of the two astronauts in this image is around on the left side of the lunar module as viewed from in front of the lunar module, where the latter is located, so that the smaller, leftmost object is the SWC and the flag, but the mystery object can't be defined. This famous picture was taken by Neil Armstrong from the area right of the SWC, while Aldrin was standing just on the other side of the footpad visible on the right in this image. The two items appear small and far away despite their relative nearness due to the convex, spherical-shaped visor, making objects appear farther away than they actually are, not much different from your rear-view mirror, which does something. In this picture, taken from the LEM, you can see at least two abnormalities. In section E, you can see an abnormal shadow on the moon's surface. NASA claims that this shadow is the shadow cast by the lunar module, but on Earth, even when aircraft is flying low to the ground, it does not produce such a clearly defined shadow. Here's a kicker: if you look at section 3, then you will notice that there are no stars in the sky. In fact, you will never see any stars in any NASA moon photographs, or hear an astronaut mention anything about the glorious stars that are visible when out of the Earth's atmosphere. Here's another image. If you look in areas 6 and J, you will again see no stars. In area K you will notice that one side of the LEM is covered in shadow, but somehow the symbol of the U.S. flag is illuminated. This very well could have been a touch-up job. But it isn't a touch-up job. See the section describing shadows on Aldrin's spacesuit. The area is lit by scattered light off the lunar surface, which is the same reason for why Irwin's shadow of spacesuit is visible so dark, but when you look at the shadowed parts of the rover you will find then the shadow is very light. Instead, the shadow part of the rover should have been dark. On the moon, there is only one light source, the sun. This is a shot of Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong planting the U.S. flag on the moon. If the sun is the only light source used by NASA on the moon, then Aldrin's shadow represented by A should not be so much longer than Neil's shadow. It seems that there is another light source used. If the height of the both astronauts are about same, then the shadow A seems to be 10% more longer than Neil's shadow. Well, a possible reason could be that the surface of moon is not plane. That's why the shadow of Aldrin is too longer than the Neil's shadow. On to some facts that an average day's temperature on the moon ranges from -260 degrees Fahrenheit to 280 degrees Fahrenheit, too hot for astronaut to survive. At those temperatures, they could have crinkles up into a ball. Also, if you look out NASA's latest spacesuit, then you would find that it can withstand about 248 Fahrenheit of temperature. Well, there is another question: that how they are able to click images in such a high temperature, when the films of the camera could easily spoiled. To this they said that the lunar landings and following exploration was done when the sun was low, the films and magazines that provided some protection from the extreme temperatures even when left in direct sunlight. In a vacuum without an atmosphere to conduct heat film inside the magazines it was carried in is quite well protected from the heat of direct sunlight. Another factor is the Van Allen. Around 20 miles about the Earth, there is a radiation belt named the Van Allen belt. No human can get through this belt. If you try, then you get hit with 300+ rads of radiation, unless they are surrounded on each side by 4 feet on lead. In fact, the Van Allen radiation belts extend from about 600 miles up to more than 40,000 miles from Earth, with the region of highest radiation intensity being between around 2,000 miles and 12,000 miles above Earth. The astronauts' exposure to those radiation belts is brief, less than 4 hours total. They begin their time in this region while traveling at 25,000 miles per hour. And they pass through it twice, once outbound, and again on their return. Also, the belt is toroidal in shape, like a donut. But cover-up given was that the astronauts spend less than an hour in the densest part of the belt and they are well protected in their spacecraft. Even the discoverer of the Van Allen belts, Professor James A. Van Allen, has noted that the belts would not have been dangerous to the Apollo astronauts given their trajectories, and the spacecraft of the Apollo was designed to avoid the worst part of the Van Allen. But here's a question: why would NASA fake it? Well, there could be many reasons, but the two main reasons are: First, for money, NASA gathered about $30 billion pretending to go to the moon. That means that someone is getting a lot of money in their pockets. That would be all of the aerospace companies and their workers who built the rockets, spacecraft, rovers, spacesuits, launch pads, etc., as well as those who supplied them with the raw materials they needed. Maybe they spent that money on their own people. Another reason could be to win the space race. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, Russia and the US were in a heated battle to see, well, pretty much who was better. Once the US realized that they couldn't send a man to the moon, they tried to fake it and make it look real. Subscribe for more uploads and don't forget to like and share this video. What are your thoughts? State your opinion on the comments section below. Let's all learn from each other.
It's getting serious on this track, man.